I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, July the 30th, brought to you in part by Fairpiece, that revolutionary product that's scientifically proven. They've done a lot of tests on this stuff, and some of you guys think it's snake oil, but in one of the tests that they did, they bought a couple loads of high-risk calves out of southeastern sale barns, one at a time. I mean, as high risk as you could get. Brought those calves back into the College Station, Texas area. They give half of them Fairpiece, the other half they did not. And then they just continued to stress those cattle. They ended up loading them up, drove them up to the Panhandle, turned around and drove them all the way back down, and then went ahead and straightened those or preconditioned those calves out. The calves that did not receive Fairpiece had a 17.6% death loss. The ones that did receive Fairpiece had a 2.9% death loss. For more information, go to fairpiece.com. Also, Beaver County Stockyards, Beaver, Oklahoma, pretty good run for them. 3,500, 500 to 600 calves. Most of them be weighing 400 to 600 pounds, and only about a third of them are going to be weaned. Of the unweaned consignment, they've got 110 head little peewee 3 and 4 weight calves being pulled right off the cow. Cows will be selling in the cow sale later, but if you're looking for some little peewees, Lane Conkle told me that they are a fancy set of little peewee calves, guys. Keep your dollars down, keep them alive, and you'll have something. Gonna have 2,400 head of yearlings, 400 to 500 head of yearling heifers, most of them weighing in the 6s and the 7s, 1,800 to 2,000 head of yearling steers, most of them weighing 8.5 to 10.5, and most of them be selling in load lot groups, guys. There will be a handful of grazing yearlings there, both steers and heifers, and about 400 cows for the cow sale. They are going to start the sale at 6 o'clock in the morning due to the heat. So be sure and mark that down. 6 o'clock in the morning for Beaver County Stockyards. It ain't just Joplin that starts early, guys. But the dog days, and we are going through them right now. And some of you guys are a little bit worried about the market because the trajectory of the market going up has kind of flattened out a little bit. But I mean, we're going through the dog days. It's the toughest time of the year to hold this market together. We typically have a good cattle market, especially on yearlings, coming through the first half of the summer with those cattle that are coming off grass. Everybody wants those. Those are the best feeding cattle of the whole year. You know, some of these guys tell me that they can make some of those green grass yearlings gain 5 pounds a day. And that is pretty impressive. I've never actually seen that, but I hear a few guys tell me that there's some cattle out there that will gain 5 pounds a day, and the same cattle will do it every year. Well, so a lot of the feedlots that get really active out there in the Flint Hills and the Osage and those big grazing areas, maybe western South Dakota, maybe over there in the foothills of the Rockies, they don't want them knowing what those cattle will do. They want to get in there, get all those cattle sopped up and bought up, so nobody else gets to take a chance to see what those cattle will do. But we see those yearlings bringing big prices up through the middle of the summer just about every year. But then when we get late in the summer, especially get into August and these old dog days, and people are tired of grilling out. They don't want to go outside and grill out whenever it's 100 degrees. They'd rather get some fresh tomatoes and eat BLTs and roasting ears, and you can't blame them. They don't get any better than that. So you don't see a big rally in your box beef cutout values usually late in the summer like this. And then your fat cattle market was a bit better last week than what we actually thought it was, because there was more cattle that sold up in the northern plains $2 higher, and so we gained a little more ground than we really thought last week. But it doesn't matter what's going on. It is hard to keep your market gathered up going through the dog days of summer. and your fat cattle market typically sucks in August. If we can kind of hold this thing together, keep it in the high 90s for your best fat cattle, and kind of keep your weighted averages in the 190s, I think that will be a victory. And let's don't get nervous about this thing falling out of bed just because we're trudging through the hottest time of the year. But, you know, Joplin Regional Stockyards on their Monday sale they had yesterday, they started at 5 o'clock in the morning and they only had 4,500 head. People just want to get away from this heat, guys. It's hard on the cattle, it's hard on the people that's working them, and we just want to stay away from it as much as we can. There's been a ton, I mean a ton, of grass cattle. If you guys have a bunch of cattle buyers on your social media, that is all you see is just pot after pot after pot after pot. Every morning loading up these cattle and sending them to the feedlots, and they're filling feedlots in Kansas and Nebraska. The predominantly black, the better quality cattle are filling up the feedlots in Nebraska, and the plainer crossbred cattle are filling up the feedlots in Kansas, and there has been a ton of them go in there. So we're not seeing our buyers and our sales typically as aggressive to fill those empty lots as we would other times. But last week we saw some high prices, as high as we've seen, or maybe higher. But it's just going to be quite a battle here to get through the next probably 2 months. There might be your cow market. Slaughter cows have come off just a little bit here in the last few weeks off those big prices, and we should see a few more cows moving as we head towards fall, when they get ready to ship those calves and they bring them in and they preg check those cows, so there will be more cows moving then. But I've had some of these cow buyers, some of them carrying multiple cow orders, telling me that it's going to get worse before it gets any better, meaning that those slaughter cows are going to get harder to find and get higher before we see a significant cutback in your price of slaughter cows. So don't get too nervous if you haven't marketed them yet. But we just got to get through the next couple of months here, get to fall, get some more moderate type weather, and keep moving these cattle through the system. Let's look at your board for Monday to open the week, and it was down hard. August live cattle was down 160 at 186.97. October down 175 at 186.80. Your back months were down 77 cents to down 162. August feeder cattle down 327 at 256.42. September down 352 at 256.07, and your back months on feeder cattle were also down hard, down 2 1/4 to down 310. December corn up 2 1/4 cents a bushel at 412 1/4. Soybeans for November down 9 at 1039 1/2. And Kansas City, they've dropped the Kansas City. They haven't traded it in Kansas City for a long time, but hard red winter wheat that used to be Kansas City for September was up 8 cents at 553 1/2. Let's talk about your weighted average on last week's negotiated fed cattle trade in your 5-area feeding region. They sold a few more than we thought, 61,100. That was more than the previous week of 57,800, and quite a bit more, 20,000 more than the same week a year ago at 41,400. Live fat steers and heifers in your 5-area bring from 187 to 198.50. That was 50 cents to $2 higher. Your weighted average on live steers in the 5-area was 195.21, up $1.54 compared to the previous week, better than what we thought. Dress sales, it's kind of weird because your price spread ranged from 301 to 312, which would have been sharply lower than the previous week's price spread, but that's why we have weighted averages. Your weighted average on dress steers was $1.30 higher than the previous week at 311.34. As a whole, your southern plains were mostly $2 higher at 190. Northern plains were $2 higher at 198 for the most part, and 312 for the most part dressed. Nationwide, we sold 73,200 negotiated. compared to 71,800 the previous week and only 51,500 the same week a year ago. Of those 73,200 negotiated nationwide, about 21% or 15,500 of them were for the 2 to 4 week delivery, or at least scheduled that way. Negotiated grid sales last week totaled 43,700. Forward contracts 27,300 head, and formula sales last week 262,500 head. They're still moving them through, guys. Of the 4 out of 5 areas in our feeding region that we get information from, Iowa sold 23,600 negotiated last week. Nebraska sold 18,000. Kansas sold 12,900, and Texas sold 6,600 in a negotiated manner. Box beef cutout values were higher to start the week. Wow, shocker. But it was mostly on the select. But choice cuts were up $1.04 at $314.81. Selects were up $4.06 at $301.52. Your slaughter, 115,000 to start the week on Monday. Exactly same as a week ago. 6,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Specialty Risk Insurance. The folks at Specialty Risk are dedicated to educating you and how LRP can work in your operation. And one of these days, like I've been telling you, we don't know if it's in 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years, but you're going to be wishing that you had it when this thing falls out of bed. I would not go unprotected, guys. Check them out at specialtyrisk.ag. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DVAuction. Late in the day on Monday, sitting at 259.03. That was down just 6 cents from the end of last week, so didn't lose too much. Your latest CME cash feeder cattle index is 258.75, running pretty close there. Let's talk about your big sales from Monday, and none of them were very big because it's just too damn hot. Oklahoma National Stockyards in Oklahoma City, 4,700 head. The feeder steers sold weak with spots as much as $5 lower on your big steers weighing over 8. The feeder heifers sold 2 to $5 higher, and calves were steady to $4 higher. So not a bad sale there in Oklahoma City on lighter run. Joplin Regional Stockyards had 4,500 head. Their market was lower, $3 to $8 lower, but they had spots on some bigger feeder steers, usually in loads weighing over 8, that was close to steady. Saw an impressive quote on some steers in Joplin. 76 head of 628-pound steers brought 309. That's awful good. How about straight north of there in Tina, Missouri, Tina Livestock? They sold 63 steers, weighed 815 at 265.5. That's awfully good. How about Tri-State Livestock Auction in McCook, Nebraska? They sell 64 steers, weighed 804 at 266.75. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Monday in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Bluegrass Stockyards in Stanford, Kentucky. They sold 69 steers, weighed 771, and bring 273.75. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.